Hello everyone, welcome to the October wrap up. These are all the books that I read in the month of October and some that I DNF'd. I definitely am still terrible at keeping track of my DNFs. So I'm not gonna ramble, let's get into it. I had a fantastic month of reading in October. I read a whole bunch of really great books. Not as spooky as I would have liked it to be. I had a bunch of like seasonal Halloween reads on my TBR that I didn't have time to get to. I still read a whole lot in October, but I feel like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I didn't read nearly as much, but actually in terms of page count, this was even better than last month, which makes October my best reading month ever in terms of page count. My number of books is a bit smaller, but either way, I read over 6,000 pages in October, but I feel like I didn't read anything. So either way, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So in the month of October, I read a total of 16 books, recorded that I DNF'd one. There was, again, definitely more than that. I want to say there were at least 5 to 10 is my guess. I have no idea what those books were, but I have just a vague memory of starting a book and putting it down. And there's at least 2 in one day. I do recall that. And then I do remember that there were a few other ones, but I don't know. They're gone. They don't exist anymore. Anyways, so one recorded DNF, and that was a grand total of 6,143 pages and 58.5 hours of audiobook time. So yeah, lots of reading this month, but again, I feel like I didn't read anything. Anyways, let's get into the books. So the DNF that I actually bothered to record was The House Where Death Lives. This one is an anthology that all takes place in the same haunted house. And it was a cool concept. It just it wasn't hitting for me. I just wasn't really enjoying it. I read the first story and I think about half of the second one, and I was just I was lukewarm about the first one and even more so about the second one, so I just called it quits and moved on with my life. So the books that I actually did read, I started off the month with An Academy for Liars by Alexis Hall. This one I gave a 4-star to. This was excellent. It's a dark academia. It's about this girl who's she's going through a really rough period in her life, and she gets a phone call on a payphone telling her to go to the school, and she's like, what the fuck? So off she goes and learns that she has been accepted into this school that she never applied for, and she has no idea what it is, and she gets there and learns that it's full of magic people, and she is one of those people. They basically have the power to control matter, so they can move things and also control people's minds and their bodies and that kind of thing. It was a really interesting concept. I very much enjoyed the magic system here. The setting was fantastic. The romance was good, but didn't really feel like it was needed. It was just kind of in there, and I did feel like it kind of took away from the rest of the story sometimes when we could have been focused on this super interesting plot that was going on, but instead she's thinking about this dude, and I'm like, stop. But other than that though, it was a fantastic book and I do recommend it. So 4 stars for that one. And then I read Painted Devils by Margaret Owen. This is the sequel to Little Thieves and it's going to be very glary, and I don't know how to hold it. Okay, I'll hold it like this, awkwardly. This is a YA fantasy series about this girl who is the goddaughter of Death and Fortune, the gods. A whole bunch of things happen in book 1 that was super fun, super interesting. I really liked book 1, and then I got to book 2 and liked it even more. In this one, without giving too much away, she accidentally starts a cult. Fully by accident, didn't mean to do that, and now she's just kind of dealing with the consequences of said cult. So super fun series. I forgot how hilarious the first book was until I picked up book 2, and I was like, oh my god, it's so funny. The main character has this very dry, sarcastic humor. She is hysterical. I was giggling the whole way through. I teared up a few times as well. I love the romance in this. It is so good. Both the main character and the love interest are demisexual. They don't use that word on page because it's a historical fantasy type thing, but the way that they talk about their feelings towards sex is very demisexual coded, and as a demisexual I thought that was super nice to see. I really enjoyed that part of it. I love their banter as well. She's this criminal turned vigilante type thing, and he's literally training to be not a cop, but essentially this world version of a cop. The plot of this was fantastic as well. I loved the whole cult thing that was going on and everything that followed that. There's a whole lot more to this book than just the cult stuff, but everything with the plot was so much fun. I had such a great time reading this book. Just found family stuff in here as well. It's just it was Such a good time, and I can't wait for book 3. And this book got a 4.5 stars. Next up was Pole Position by Rebecca J. Caffery. This one is a contemporary sports romance about Formula One drivers. And if you don't know this about me, I am a huge fan of Formula One racing, which is shocking because I don't give a shit about cars like at all, but I do weirdly love racing. So I saw this one and I had to read it as fast as I could. I had it on hold for like a solid 4 or 5 months, and it finally came in and I ate this book up. Oh, it was so good. This one follows our 2 main characters. The one is a seasoned F1 driver and his teammate is also his best friend, but for the new season of racing he is injured and he can't compete. So they bring in a rookie to replace him for the season. It's his very first F1 season and he is so excited. He's a huge fanboy of the main character. He's absolutely adorable, chaotic mess. Like, he is such a hot mess. And the other main character is a very like neat and tidy, meditates all the time kind of guy. Like, they're very, very opposite, but they're forced to be teammates and they hate each other. And of course things gradually progress from there and it turns into this beautiful romance that just like warmed my heart and made me so happy. I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. I did have a little bit of a like bit in the middle where I was not really enjoying it. It was a bit in the middle where like they were not friends yet. They were like, they still really hated each other, but they were forced to live together in a trailer for a few weeks. And the rookie character, the like really messy one, was just purposely being an asshole and like intentionally leaving the house a mess and being disrespectful and really fucking with the guy's mental health, because the tidy main character, he would talk about all the time how he meditates and keeps his space clean and keeps everything really zen because he needs that because he has really bad anxiety. And then this guy who just like came in and purposely fucked with that, and I thought that was pretty shitty. So I really didn't enjoy that part of it, but that ended pretty quickly and we kind of moved on from that. So after that point I was really enjoying it, but that little bit in the middle was not a good time. So it did lose a star for that reason. After that was How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This one follows a young girl who is like transported to this fantasy world because she is told that she is going to be the chosen one who is destined to take down the Dark Lord. And the book starts when she has been doing this cycle over and over and over again, and she keeps dying and respawning right back at the beginning. And at this point she's just like, fuck this. I am so done being the savior. I'm gonna fuck around and just go and become the Dark Lord instead. So that's the whole point of this book, is her just like trying to figure out how to become the Dark Lord. And of course she keeps dying and respawning and dying and respawning, and like she is so unhinged and like she's gone insane. It's hilarious. This was a very, very funny book. I laughed the whole way through. And okay, so I did give it 4 stars. However, this was not a good book. It was poorly written. It was stupid. It was abundantly clear that this was a bisexual female main character written by a man. So clear. Very, very obvious. I fully understand and agree with all of the critiques that I read in the reviews. This was not a good book. It was pretty bad. It wasn't terrible, but like it was pretty bad. But it was so much fun and I kind of loved it. I went into this book expecting it to be like just like a stupid fun time, and that's exactly what I got. My expectations were low and they were met, and that's why I'm happy with it. So if you do read this book, just go into it knowing that it is very dumb and very unserious, and just kind of have fun with it and just whatever, fuck it, have a good time. Then I read Clean Sweep by Ilona Andrews. This one was read for, was it the Cozy Quill Book Club? I think. It might have been. It was for one of the book clubs that I'm in on Fable. I'll figure out which one it was and link it down below. This one was fun. I did like it. I gave it a 3.5 star kind of in there. It follows a magical innkeeper and a werewolf as they try and figure out what weird beasts have been killing their townspeople. This was very strange. So, like, there's witches and vampires and werewolves and that kind of thing, but it's more of a sci-fi because like all of those creatures, yes, they're like fantasy creatures, but they came from different planets and they're on Earth, but they're aliens, but they're werewolves and vampires and witches. It's weird. It's a very strange sort of thing. I was not expecting it to have that sci-fi fantasy twist. That was kind of a surprise, and like it wasn't an unwelcome one. It was just interesting and I didn't expect that. I wasn't fully hooked by this book for the first little while. I was liking it enough to finish it, but I wasn't really planning on reading more in the series. But then I got to the end and I kind of liked it enough where I think I'm going to continue the series at some point. It's not going to be a priority, but I did like it enough that I will carry on. eventually, whenever I'm in the mood for a palate cleanser, basically. Next up, I read And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. This one is about a indigenous woman who marries a white man and they've just had their first baby. And this one is a horror novel about motherhood and indigenous identity. I liked those concepts a lot. I thought they were super well done. There's a lot more going on in this book than just that, but I don't really want to give away too much. It's kind of a weird book. It's weird but good. I liked the majority of it. I just really didn't like the ending. It used a trope that bothers me quite a bit that I obviously can't say because it would spoil the entire book. But yeah, it just like used a trope that I don't think is problematic. It's just personally, I don't like when books use that trope that it used. So I gave it 3 stars, but everything up to that point was fantastic. And I definitely recommend this book. Just definitely look at trigger warnings first though, because there's quite a bit of stuff going on. So be mindful with that, but this was a great book and I do recommend it, just minus the ending, unfortunately. The ending took it down from a 4-star to a 3-star for me. So, but either way, still enjoyed it and do recommend it. Super annoying, but my camera just cut off and I'm really mad about it. It didn't delete the entire clip that I just filmed. It was like 25 minutes, but it did for some reason not record the last 10 minutes of footage. It just cut off and it was like, oh hey, here's 18 minutes when I was already at 28 minutes. And I'm like, motherfucker. So I'm irritated. And I'm just gonna talk about the books that it missed, I guess, but quickly because I already spent time talking about them. I don't want to do it again right now. So it cut off when I just finished talking about And Then She Fell. So after that, I read the book of Queer Saints. This is an anthology of queer horror that I very much enjoyed. I bought this one back in May, but I was waiting until spooky season to read it, and I'm so happy that I did. This was fantastic. I skipped 3 of the stories. One of them I just wasn't very interested in, but the other 2 were very well written to the point that I could not handle them. They were too much for me personally. So otherwise though, these were pretty much all fantastic and I gave this a 4-star. And then I read Thistlefoot by GennaRose Nethercott. This one was absolutely, oh my god, Jesus Christ. Full of interruptions today apparently. And it was a spam call anyways, not even an actual phone call. Why do things go wrong every single time that I film a wrap up? Either my battery's dead or I already get interruptions or my SD card fucks up or something is going wrong every single time. Anyways, Thistlefoot. I loved this book. This was phenomenal. It's like one of the best books that I've read. It went straight to my favorite shelf. This one follows 2 siblings who have just gotten news that they are inheriting something from an ancestor who's just passed away. So they go and pick it up and find this gigantic box that has a whole ass house in it. And they open it and then the house stands up on its chicken legs. They are the descendants of Baba Yaga and they've just inherited the family house with chicken legs. So, and they decide to go on a puppet show tour with the house. Their parents did puppet shows when they were kids, and so they're just gonna carry on with the tradition and use their traveling house to go and do puppet shows all over the place. And there's also a very creepy shadow man kind of following behind them and things go from there. This was such a beautiful story. It was extremely well written. The family elements were gorgeous. The found family stuff as well, which I always love. I'm a sucker for a good found family. The magic of this house felt alive. It was so good. Every once in a while there's also a chapter that comes from the perspective of the house where it's just telling its story and its history, and in the audiobook it's this like old lady voice narrator. It was fantastic. It was so perfect for that house. This book made me laugh and cry on the bus actually, which is very embarrassing, but I couldn't stop myself. And yeah, it was just a phenomenal book and I can't recommend it enough. It was so good. And then I read Laura of the Wilds by Analeigh Sbrana. This one is a fairy fantasy about our main character who is a human, and humans are treated very poorly in this world. They all live in like this one town surrounded by forest and they are not allowed to leave the forest until one day the main character is brought to the castle and things go from there. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forget the plot a little bit. I remember like key parts of it, but not like the actual main plot for some reason. This book wasn't overly memorable for me. I read it in one sitting. It was a pretty quick read, but it wasn't like a very standout-ish book, you know what I mean? I will read the sequel still because it was interesting enough to want to continue, but I found the romance in the beginning to be a huge ick. I did not like the love interest whatsoever. I thought it was like really cringy, and just awkward. And yeah, like it was a fine book. I feel like this book had really good ideas but not great execution, but it could have, you know, like it definitely had the potential. I loved the world and the magic and the history of the world as well too. It was just like the characters and the relationships that I felt like needed some work. So overall I liked this book, but it wasn't amazing, so I gave it a 3-star. And then I read The Battle Drum by Saara El-Arifi. This is book 2 in the Final Strife series, and I adored this book. Oh my god, it was good. I gave it a 4.5 star. It was very, very close to a 5, but I just didn't quite get there. But this was like a near perfect book. This is a very hard book to explain. There's like a whole history of the world behind it first, but basically in this world people are separated by the color of their blood. So the red bloods are the elite, they're superior. Blue bloods are kind of in the middle but still treated very poorly, and clear bloods are treated like servants. And they also have their hands and tongues cut out at birth to mark them forever as a servant. But 20 years before the start of this book, there were a bunch of babies that got swapped. So there was a revolution that took a whole bunch of red blood babies and swapped them with blue blood babies. That way they could have these like red bloods grow up with the blue bloods and see how horrible things are for them, so that one day when they're ready they can enter into this set of trials that if they win those trials then they are brought into the government and they can take down the government from the inside. So the main character is one of those red blood babies, and the book starts after the revolution has failed and she has no interest in being anyone's hero. It's a very interesting world and concept for a fantasy series. I love the reluctant hero trope. It hits for me every single time, and this one is no exception. It's phenomenal. I liked book 2 even more than book 1. It's just so well written. I love the characters. There's all this like really interesting political intrigue, adventure going on. There's like things behind the scenes and in the shadows. There's so much going on and it's a lot to pay attention to, but it's written in a way that it just makes sense and it's very easy to follow. Everything is very engaging. The characters are all interesting. Everything is like interwoven in really interesting ways. It's a phenomenal series, and this book was just incredible, and I can't wait to get to the last book in the series. I have it on hold right now and I'm just very impatiently waiting for it. Next up was A Vile Season by David Ferraro. This one is a Regency vampire book that meets Bridgerton with The Bachelor, and it was super fun, really cheesy but like in a fun way. This one follows our main character who is a vampire, and he goes to the vampire lord because he wants more power, and he makes a deal where he will turn human temporarily so that he can go and enter into this like bachelor style trial that the Duke is putting on for his hand. And if he succeeds and wins the Duke's hand, then he will be turned back into a vampire with more power than he could ever imagine. But if he fails, then the vampire lord will keep him human and torture him for the rest of his life. It was super fun. Again, very, very cheesy. There's like a murder mystery thing going on in here. Lots of like romance stuff and all this like all the bachelor style things, a whole trial thing. Like it was kind of a lot, but it was fun. I did like it. I gave it 3 stars. I do wish that there was more focus on the murder mystery elements of things rather than all of the like competition for the Duke's hand. I found that part to be the least interesting part of this book, but overall it was still fun and I did enjoy it, so 3 stars for that one. And then was Looking for Love in All the Haunted Places by Kann. This one is a contemporary like paranormal romance set in a haunted house about a woman who is like going to be the next person to try and like stay in this house for 30 days for a TV show. This was great. I liked this one quite a bit. There were certain elements that I wasn't like huge on. I liked the romance because the main character is asexual, and I thought how that was handled was pretty well done from what I could tell. I liked the conversations that they had surrounding sex and boundaries and that kind of thing. I thought that was great. The setting was fantastic. The haunted house and all the cool haunting stuff, the friendships that were built, all that was great. It was just the ending kind of brought it down for me a little bit because it ended so abruptly. I feel like we were in the middle of the climax and all of a sudden the book was just done. So that definitely brought it down for me a bit, but I still gave it a 3.5 star and do recommend this one for a quick fun read. And then more vampire books. I reread A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson for the 3rd time. I adore this book. It's one of my all-time favorites. This one is a kind of a retelling of Dracula's Brides, but it's told from his first bride as a letter to him after the events have concluded, and she's just reflecting on their story and all of the things that he did to her over their very, very long relationship. This is such a beautiful gothic story. I absolutely adore it. I gave it 5 stars. I would give it a 5 stars every time that I've read it. It's just so stunning and so well written. I love the relationships. It's atmospheric and very haunting. There's this feeling of dread the whole time and hope, and just all of these beautiful things come up, and I can't get over this book. I'll probably keep rereading it at least once a year. Like, I can't get over it. It's so, so beautiful. And the audiobook is also fantastic as well, so I do recommend that. And yeah, I just love this book so much. Next up was This Ravenous Fate by Hayley Dennings. More vampire books. I was clearly in a mood and kind of still am. I'm still reading vampire books actually. This one is a YA vampire book that takes place in 1920s New York City. I loved the setting for this one. The vibes were immaculate. It was so, so good. It's also a sapphic romance as well. I loved some parts of this book but didn't love other ones. So like I said, the setting was great. The romance also pretty good for the most part. I didn't like one of the main characters. I thought she was pretty annoying. The other main character was fantastic. I liked her so much, but the one was just kind of annoying and I really didn't like reading from her POV. So she kind of brought it down for me quite a bit, and the plot was good, but it was very predictable. I guessed every single beat pretty much from page 1, so it was good. I just didn't love it, but I will read the sequel, and I gave this one a 3-star. And then on a whim, I picked up, I don't really know how to say the title of this book. It's a manga that has to do with Dracula somehow. I don't really know. I have no idea what I read with this book. I read it in like half an hour and I don't have a singular clue what was going on, but I kept reading it because the art style was so pretty that I was just enjoying looking at it. But as for the plot, no idea at all. So I gave it 2 stars. No, I have no clue what happened in that book. It was so confusing. The dialogue was weird. It was like all these random characters that I had no idea how they even interacted or had anything to do with each other at all. It was a very strange read, but it was pretty. So 2 stars, and both of those stars are for the art. And finally, after filming for like 45 minutes, I am still currently reading the first book in the Interview with the Vampire series. I technically should count this towards my November stat, but I got to the halfway mark in October, so I'm counting it towards October. This one is a classic vampire story that came out in the 1970s, so I really doubt that I have to go over it, but long story short, it's about a man who is turned into a vampire, and then the book takes place in the 1970s as he is telling a story to a reporter. It's beautifully atmospheric. The story is so compelling, and I'm very much enjoying this one so far, and I can't wait to continue it. I don't know what rating I'm gonna give it yet, but I'm thinking it'll probably be a 4-star, but I will update whenever I finish it. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in October. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hate filming wrap-ups. Like, every time that I do it, something goes wrong. It always takes me forever to film these. I've literally been talking for like almost an hour now. So I like having a wrap up on my channel every month. I like the consistency of it. I like having them, I just don't like making them. So I think I'm going to continue doing this for the rest of the year, and then come the new year, I'm gonna try and find a different system of doing a wrap up. So if you have any ideas for a different way to do a monthly wrap up, please let me know your ideas. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys later on.